Hi everyone, happy Candle Day. I have a special review for you today of a Yankee candle fragrance that I am actually excited about, which is kind of a rarity for me these days, as I've talked about, many times previously. So this is Yankee Candle's Autumn Lodge. I picked this up from the outlet as part of 6 for 60. It was just a select table of candles that were a part of the 6 for 60. And this was one of them, and I was really excited to see this because Autumn Lodge is one of their returning favorites. It's a very old fragrance. I do not remember or know the year that it came out. I used to know, I can't remember now, but it is one of their original fragrances, and it's stood the test of time, I think, for very good reason, because it's just a marvelous fragrance. So on cold, I absolutely loved this, and I was really hoping for good performance on warm, and as we'll talk about in a little bit here, I actually have not been disappointed. So let's go ahead and get into the fragrance notes. Okay, so the description on this is a woody fragrance, mellow as a fall afternoon. The aroma of, oh my gosh, what's happening here with my computer? The aroma of aged woods and a glowing earth bids a timeless welcome. Top notes of herbs, fruity notes, and sage. Middle notes of raspberry, nutmeg, and clove, and base notes of sandalwood, patchouli, vetiver, and cedar. So let me tell you what I smell of these notes. Okay, so there is not, so it says that there's fruity notes in here, and as we know, that top note is supposed to be sort of the initial impression of the fragrance. If there is a fruit in here, I would say that it's more of a stone fruit. It's kind of like a dark and an earthy fruit. Not like a fig, but more of maybe a plum, perhaps. And then I definitely get some spice, but it's not a cinnamon, and there is no cinnamon in here per the notes anyway. But I think the clove is what I'm picking out here. And then that's very beautifully blended with like a sage and some woody notes that I'm assuming are that sandalwood and that cedar. You get a touch of like an incense, which I believe is the patchouli. And then it does say that there is some raspberry in here. I guess I could see that. Again, maybe I don't know what I'm picking out with the fruity notes, if it's like a kind of a tart, earthy raspberry, or if it's more of like a stone fruit, like a plum. It's kind of hard for me to differentiate because we have so many other notes that are a little bit more powerful. And then it says in that top notes category as well that we have some herbs. I could not tell you what those herbs are. To my nose, I almost get like just a little bit, a tiny essence of some mint, but it's not like a peppermint or a spearmint. It's almost just like a tiny little peep of like garden mint. Almost like they just have a little bit of their fresh mint in here. Fresh mint is another one of their classic fragrances that I have and that I'll probably be reviewing within the next month or so. And the combination of these notes, it's perfection. There's no better way for me to put it other than it's just perfection. This is the type of fall fragrance that I want. This is the type of fall fragrance that I wish to see every year. And certainly can we grab some of the classics and be satisfied with that? We can, but it's disappointing to me that Yankee and that even other candle brands are not able to put out fragrances like this. If you are into vendor wax, one of my favorite vendors is Teddy B's, and the reason she is my favorite vendor is because these are the types of fragrances that she creates. This very much reminds me of like a Teddy Bees fragrance. There's a lot of thought went into this, not just in the notes, but also in the ratios of the oils, the combination of the notes. So, you know, what did they maybe want to come out a little bit more strongly versus, you know, what was supposed to be a background note. You can tell that there's a lot of thought here. And it doesn't seem like there's that thought with the newer fragrances. It's just, you know what, let's throw a handful of these notes in at almost equal ratios, and we'll just see what happens, and we'll see what happens when we stir it all up. I mean, I'm sure that's not what happens, okay? I'm exaggerating there, because obviously they probably have a team of individuals who are responsible for developing these fragrances that you know, do spend, I mean, it's their job, right? They do spend a good amount of time doing so, but I just don't know why we've gotten so far away from this. It's almost like the first draft is the only draft, okay? You know, if you think about like writing a paper, right? Writing a book, you have a rough draft, and that rough draft is never that's never the finished product, right? You make modifications, you tweak it, you try different things. And I feel like they used to do that, and now it's like that rough draft, if it doesn't smell absolutely repulsive, and sometimes even if it does, that's what goes out on the shelves. And it's disappointing, you know. I would love something more thought out than this, but I also understand that takes time, and that's where I think part of the disappointment comes in sort of the cheapening of things, right? Not just quality in terms of maybe materials being used, but a lack of quality, you know, with the fragrances themselves as well. So anyway, back to the fragrance and my impression of it. It's almost a nostalgic fragrance, not necessarily, you know, because I've burned it before. In fact, I really don't know if I've ever, I think I've smelled Autumn Lodge. I certainly have smelled Autumn Lodge. I don't know if I've ever burned it in the past, but more nostalgic and just in the feeling that it evokes. It really is like a cabin in the woods. Truly, like a cabin in the woods that you are just opening up for the first time, you know, for the season. And you've got just all the notes there. And the fruit that's in here, it's even like reminiscent, I think, of the time of year. Maybe not so much the raspberry, because raspberry is more of a kind of a early midsummer fruit or berry, but you know, there could be maybe some blackberry in here, and certainly that stone fruit is kind of a late summer thing. So even down to those notes, I think it was very well thought out. And then and that patchouli is just, it really is balanced extremely well. Sometimes I'm a little iffy on patchouli because I do like an incense, but not just a plain straightforward incense fragrance. I want it to be blended with other things. And so this was just the perfect amount of patchouli to add a little bit of depth, to add a little bit of almost just mysteriousness and comfort at the same time to this fragrance. And sage as well. I don't think I mentioned that note. I do get some sage, and it's very much like a dried herb type of sage. And again, it just really goes along with that cabin feeling, that cabin in the woods feeling. So as far as the quality of the burn, the fragrance throw, so quality of the burn, you can see here, it wasn't the best. I haven't been able to find my Illumilids, so I don't know if it would have, if that would have fixed it, having the Illumilid on there or not. I should just buy another one. I think there were a few that were like 65% off at the outlet. So the other thing I wanted to mention, not necessarily part of this review, but I did go to the outlet yesterday when I went to Bath & Body Works for Candle Day, just to see what they had, because all of the original large jars were $12. So I went in there, And I really wasn't tempted. I think the only thing that I probably would have walked out with may have been the 'Tis the Season in Sydney, which isn't really a winter fragrance. It's more of a beachy fragrance, but I do really like it on cold. But I just, again, fear performance with the large jars, with the original large jars, the 1 wick paraffin wax. So even at a $12 price point, I thought, yeah, you know what? They're going to have a semi-annual sale. Usually, and I don't know if it's changed this year now that inflation, you know, has sort of changed prices across the country, but usually for semi-annual sale, they do a 6 for $60, like on the whole store. So at least all of the original large jars are 6 for $60. So I thought, you know, if I can get it for $10 versus the 12, I'd rather wait to do that. And even then, now I'm really going back on what I've said in fairly recent videos, that I'm never going to purchase any candles from Yankee. Totally going back on what I said, but 'Tis the Season in Sydney is one that's not in the wax melts, so that would be the only reason I would probably consider purchasing that, is simply because I can't get it in a format that I would like. It's not in to my understanding, I don't think it's in the wax melts or in the melt cups, and neither is fresh powder. That was the other one that I smelled in store. Because they finally had it at the outlet, and I like fresh powder. I think probably of all of the fragrances in that new collection, in the 2 new winter collections, I think 'Tis the Season in Sydney and fresh powder are honestly probably the most appealing to me on cold. And I did a warm review on a couple of the other ones, which were, one of them was in the melt cup and performed well, and it was a nice fragrance. But I certainly would have liked to try fresh powder and 'Tis the Season in Sydney. But like I said, even at a price point of $12 for potentially unscented candle, nope. So we'll see what happens around semi-annual sale time. So anyway, back to this candle. I'm kind of going off on a tangent here. Autumn Lodge. So the burn was not terrible, not fantastic. I'll pick you up and show you the burn. We've got some tunneling. Now it looks a lot worse than it is. I did just light this up about an hour ago, so it hasn't had the opportunity to fully pull out. Again, however, it's not done that well with pulling out and so I've never had this lit for less than 4 hours. And I'm still getting quite a bit of that wax skunk on the sides. I'm getting some tunneling that's happening. You can see some sooting around the top, you know, where the jar gets a little bit thinner up there. So it could have been better, could have been a better burn. But sort of what I expect with a 1 wick. Like I said, if I had an Illumilid on it, it probably would have done better. So then in terms of performance, I was actually pleasantly surprised. This is probably the best performing original 1 wick paraffin wax large jar that I've burned in quite a while. It actually did very well. In terms of the fragrance strength, when I was in the kitchen, I have this burning here in the kitchen, I would probably give it, at its worst, maybe a 5 out of 10. At its best, getting close to an 8 out of 10. I don't really want to, we're going to say 7.5. We're going to say a healthy 7.5, because I don't really even know that I could give it an 8. But like I said, in comparison to a lot of the 1 wicks from Yankee, this did really well. And it was not something I went nose blind to. It was present consistently. Sometimes the other issue that I have with the 1 wicks and the paraffin wax, there's lots of marbling of the oils, and I sometimes think that depending on where you are in the candle, the wax really contains like different concentrations of the fragrance oil. So sometimes with 1 wicks, I will, like with these candles, it seems like I'm like hitting a patch of oil, like a struck gold. I've hit oil, and all of a sudden I get really decent fragrance. and then I'll hit a patch where maybe there's not a very high concentration of the fragrance oils. This was a pretty consistent performer in terms of I didn't really notice a whole lot of fluctuation. Like I said, maybe between 5 to 7.5. But it's other candles I've had, you know, sometimes I can't smell it at all, to, oh my gosh, that's, yeah, it's here. Here's the candle. I can really smell it now. And I'm not a fan of that. I would prefer the consistent burn and consistent throw. But you know, that's sometimes a side effect of that paraffin wax, whereas I think the softer wax, you don't have that much of an issue because it's just blended a little bit more seamlessly, the fragrance oils and the wax. So then fragrance throw, it wasn't like reaching out into my living room or anything like that, but it stayed in the kitchen and it did well in the kitchen. So that's about it. That's my review of Autumn Lodge. I wish this came in other forms, because I can guarantee it would be a repurchase for me in other fragrance formats. But one day I may pick this up again because I did enjoy it so much. Of course, it may be iffy if another candle performs as well as this one did, because that's just the way that Yankee goes. But I highly recommend it for the fragrance itself. So thank you for watching, and stay tuned for my next video.